Hello and welcome to the Division Beta. Russian Hat Simulator 2016. Fucking Tactical Role Simulator 2016. Alright, so this video is to give you guys kind of a overview of the beta and the game and how I see it and how I think it'll do once the game actually comes out. So I've played through the beta with two different characters. I've done the Dark Zone. I've maxed out all my levels. And for the most part, I think this game is what they said it was going to be in terms of what they've set up to this point in trailers and interviews and things like that. I don't think, in terms of performance, there hasn't been any major issues. The game looks really good. It runs really well. I have a 8350 and a R9 290, so if you guys know what that is, that's some mid-range hardware, and it runs pretty good on it. I can't max out the settings, obviously. Graphics card's a little old, and processor's definitely old, but runs pretty good. I haven't had any frame rate issues. I haven't had any screen tearing issues. As for people with other hardware, I can't speak about that. And for consoles, can't speak about that either. So let's get into a mission real quick. We'll dive into the real meat of the game.
The JTF and Sarah were using the site as a field hospital, but armed hostiles swarmed in.
So basically, the way this game works is it's a shooter RPG. There's a lot. It has a cover system. There's a lot of. There's a skill tree. There's also perks and talents and things like that. Unfortunately, in the beta, you don't really get a good look at all of the things. You only have access to 4 skills out of the 15, and access to perks of 1 skill. I should really be looking at the skill tree while I describe this to you, but let's talk about the shooting. The shooting is tight. I like it. The enemies are not too bullet spongy if you build your character correctly. I don't think it is as egregious as Destiny in terms of bullet sponging. Like, real quick, we'll dive into the skills here, the abilities. So you have different trees, you have different abilities, but you also have perks, or mods, they call them. And you can change to the way that your ability actually works. And the effectiveness of your abilities is judged by your skill power, which is what it was on that menu, but it's easier to see right there. You have primary DPS, health, and skill power. Skill power is judged by your electronics. You get electronics by equipping equipment that has electronics attached to it, like these knee pads. You can see to the right, it's giving me plus 28 electronics, so that's helping me with my skill power. So that increases the attributes of the actual weapons. Like, say for instance, the pulse. So the base pulse is, it gives you bonus 10.8% critical hit chance, but because of my skill power bringing it up, it gives me an extra 1%, 1.1%. Gives me an extra 2.6% in critical hit damage, and it lowers the cooldown by about 4 seconds. So there's also talents. I can't really see what's going on with that, unfortunately. There's also perks, and I can't really look at that either. So my main issue with this beta is that while it is extremely polished, it is also extremely short and extremely limited in that you cannot access, I would argue, 98% of the content of the game, which makes sense. It's a beta. You're not supposed to be able to play the game. But at the same time, the progression of the story and the missions is tied to the skill trees, and it's tied to the abilities and the perks. So say, for instance, if you wanted to play this game PvP only, that's not really an option. You have to play single player in order to progress properly, which is an interesting choice. I don't think I would have necessarily gone with it, especially in this multiplayer-driven world that we live in. But it is a co-op shooter. It's not mainly a PvP shooter, even though I think that that is its strongest point, is when you are in the Dark Zone. That is the most interesting part about this game. Unfortunately, you have to... It feels like in the final game, you're going to have to trudge through most of the single player, or at least some of it, until you can go in the Dark Zone. You can go in the Dark Zone any level you want, but I'm sure people are going to go into the Dark Zone, get beat by someone who's been shit-bucketing the game since release, and they're going to say to themselves, you know what, I'll do the story, I'll get better equipment, I'll come back to this later. And they may never do that. Because, frankly, as someone who loves story in video games, and loves single player, plays games like, you know, Mass Effect, KOTOR, RPGs with strong stories, this game does not have a story. Like, I wouldn't buy this game for the story. That's definitely 100% my opinion on the matter. And while it does have an interesting concept, it has an interesting starting point, it doesn't necessarily hold your attention the entire time. At least from what I've seen in the beta. So, I guess the main question at this point is, what are they going to do with DLC? What are they going to do with microtransactions, if there's going to be any? And, am I ever going to get good at the game? Those are the main questions that we have to ask ourselves. So, in terms of microtransactions, do I think this game is going to do microtransactions? At this point, I don't know if they've announced anything like that. The only thing I do know is that they do have Dark Zone keys, and they can allow you to access crates in the Dark Zone and get you loot. Here's the thing with that, is that I have not seen... Like, you can get the keys in the beta. Just by walking around, shooting people, killing people. You can drop keys when you die. So as far as I know, that won't be microtransaction based, but it makes me suspicious that maybe they're thinking about it, or thought about it at one point. Perhaps they'll elaborate more. They are already selling a season pass. They're planning on DLC. And if you look at the map here, you can see that this white area is going to be what's in the base game. The red area is the beta only, and everything outside of that is, I assume, going to be in an expansion. So, it's a fairly decent-sized chunk of New York City. It's a one-to-one recreation of the city, so I'd say that's fair. From what I've seen, they like to populate their game world with encounters. A lot more encounters than actual missions, it seems, since there's only one mission in the beta and probably 15 to 20 encounters. It feels very MMO to me in that. But at the same time, the world is very interesting. It's very detailed. It's fantastically laid out, and like just how busy the environments are with objects, and how detailed they are, and how nice they look. And when you can actually interact with those objects at the same time, it makes it feel alive. Makes it feel less like a video game, more like an experience. At the same time, there seems to be, in terms of level design of the city, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of ways to get around other than the streets. You know, if you, like, you're basically using the streets 99% of the time. There really isn't a way to get around that. 99% of the time. Sometimes there's sewers, sometimes there's alleys. There aren't nearly enough of either of those, I believe. Especially in the Dark Zone. From what I've experienced, there are not a lot of choices. You get forced into certain routes, and when there are groups of 4, specifically going rogue and killing everyone around them, and there isn't enough players interested in fighting them to stop their rogueness, it makes it a little tough.
We used to watch games there together.
Yesterday, my experience was there was this group of 4 in the Dark Zone, and I was down a street that the only way to move forward was to go down the street where the group of 4 and the rogues were.
Go get him.
And I can even show you the point on the map in which it happened to me. It's not a particularly... This street right here. This street, it ends here. It's blocked off. So I was here checking out the contaminated zone. And the group of 4 going rogue were at this extraction area. So from here, the only way to progress forward to get to this entrance, which is actually not an entrance, you cannot exit the Dark Zone through that. I'm not sure why it's marked there. The only way to actually get through them was to go through them. Oh, now over here you have some alleyways and things like that, but basically I walked this way. I had loot I was going to extract it over here. The group of 4 followed me and killed me. And I just wish there were more subways. See, you have a subway here, and you can actually see the route that it takes you along, and it brings you to 3 other entrances. I want to see this expanded upon. Like, if there was an entrance over here, I could have taken that. If there were buildings to climb on top of and move forward, I would have liked to take that. I would have liked to go this way, instead of having to go this way, having the group of 4 see me and start following me. So I'd like to see the world feel more open world. Unfortunately, it doesn't feel as open as it should, personally, I think. Like I said, it's very well detailed. Looks great, but it could use some more avenues in which the player can approach how to navigate. With AI, it's not so bad, because the AI spawns in a certain place, and they're not that hard, but in the Dark Zone, I feel like they need to step up their game in terms of how many options they give the player, and how to move around. Oh no, I'm bad at the game. Everyone knows now. Everyone knows I'm bad. Alright. So, honestly, that's pretty much all I have to say about The Division. Personally, I think I'm gonna pick it up. I'm gonna look more into it. I may regret that. I may not. We shall see. As far as I know, it might. In terms of, are you gonna get your money's worth out of the game at $60 launch? I think probably if you are, it's going to be in the Dark Zone. I don't think you're going to find a very compelling single-player experience in this game. I think the best way to experience this is to get a group of 4, go into the Dark Zone, and try and get some loot and play with your friends. I think that's the way the game was designed to play. I'm not exactly sure why in some interviews they're toting this as a fantastic single-player experience that you don't need friends to enjoy it. I mean, I kind of know why they're saying that, and it's because of money, but this adds a very unique twist on the DayZ gameplay, in that when you try and kill someone in the Dark Zone and take their loot, it makes you go rogue. The problem with that system, if you'll bear with me for a second, is that you can shoot someone about 3 or 4 times and you are rogue. If you do it on accident, if they walk in front of you while you're shooting, the game does not care. It will absolutely mark you as rogued, and everyone around you will gun you down.
You are now entering a contaminated area.
Players don't seem to care if you're not actually rogue. Oh, I can't open the box. That's great. They don't seem to care if you're actually rogue or not. They just want the permission to kill you, which adds a level of griefing that they were trying to stop in the first place. So it's an interesting problem. I'd like to see them maybe change the parameters of what makes you rogue, make it a little more forgiving. But again, it's a hard issue. I'm not sure how to necessarily approach it. Maybe if you have to tag yourself rogue and then you can fire at people, that might be a better system, honestly, so that it's not so you don't get to just open up and get free shots on people. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the Division overall. The beta is good. It's okay. Feels a little short. Would have liked it to be a little longer. Maybe do 2 missions instead of 1. Doing the hospital 8 times is not exactly a great way to make players feel like this is going to be a compelling experience. But then again, it is a beta. They're doing bug fixes, not necessarily showing off their best in terms of gameplay. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Those are my thoughts on the beta. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. If you want to see more on The Division when it comes out March 8th, you can subscribe to the channel and I will definitely release videos on it. That's it on my part. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.